which the Prophet ﷺ, according to the strongest narrations, the year that he was born in. And the year that he was born in is known as the Am al-Fil, the year of the elephant. Now, there's going to be a lot of detail today, and it may be difficult for you to write everything down. But I think if you want to record primarily and then write what you can, inshallah. But I don't want you to write fast and miss what's being said. I'd rather you focus what's being said, inshallah, and then just take 1 or 2 notes down, inshallah. The idea is not to write everything down. The idea is to listen and take that which is important, and the recording's there anyway. Now, we find that the year in which the Prophet ﷺ was born was called the year Am al-Fil. And the story, the ulama say that in Yemen there was a leader. Some say he was a mushrik, and some say he was of the Jewish faith. There's differences. But he, when he heard, and this is before Islam, when he heard that there's a new religion amongst his kingdom, and people, in particular, people of a particular part of Yemen, began to worship in a different way. And they called themselves Christian. They called themselves Christian. And he did not like this new religion. And the people of Najran, which is in Yemen, the community of Christians became quite strong. And he decided to persecute and to kill all those who had left his faith, whatever his faith was, and entered into this new faith of Christianity. And he would dig up trenches, and he would pour fire into these trenches, molten lead or fire, and he would throw people in, men, women, and children into it, unless they left their religion. And he began to do that. A lot of people, a lot of Christians lost their lives, and there's a long hadith that talks about this. And in the Quran, Ashab al-Ukhdud. There was a Christian though who survived persecution and fled, and he went to neighboring country. He went to Ar-Rum. He went to Ar-Rum because the Christian leader there, the king, and obviously the country was strongly Christian. He sought help from the leader, and the leader sent him to Abyssinia, which was strongly Christian. Abyssinia, strongly Christian. And he told him, go to the king of Abyssinia and seek help from him because his country is nearer. So he went to the king of Abyssinia. And the king of Abyssinia was called Najashi. That was like the name. It's like a name like the kings had. And the king of Abyssinia, when he heard what was happening to his fellow Christians in Yemen, he sent two army generals. One was called Ariyat, and one was called Abraha. These two army generals, and they went to Yemen, and they defeated the army of Yemen at the time, and they defeated they kicked them out basically. And the leader of Yemen at that time, the battle that happened between him and these two army generals from Abyssinia happened near the sea, and he was chased out to sea, and he fell into the sea, and his horse, and he drowned, like Fir'aun. He drowned, subhanAllah. Anyway, these two leaders, Abraha and Ariyat, they remained in Yemen. And they remained in Yemen, and they began to have disputes over how to rule Yemen. And things got worse, and they began to fight with one another. That's what happens, subhanAllah, when you have no tazkiyah. You start to fight with one another, and that's what started to happen. And things got really bad between the two armies. And then they then came to an agreement that rather than our armies lose on both sides innocent life, how about the best thing is that you and I have a 1-to-1 duel. That I will face you and you will face I, and we will see who wins. Whichever one of us wins the battle, he's in charge. So they decided, yes, to spare the life of their fellow army, because they went with all one army. It's better just you and I. we'll have a fight, and whoever wins becomes the leader. So they agreed. They went and they started fighting, and Ariyat, he gave Abraha some really severe blows. In the books of Seera, it says that he chopped off his nose and split his face. And it says that despite that, his freed slave Abraha had a freed slave who then took the sword and killed Ariyat. Anyway, the Abraha then survived, and his wounds were seen to, and he regained a full recovery, and he became the leader of Yemen, and he resided in Sana'a. Sana'a is the capital of Yemen. Now, what he began to notice that people were leaving Sana'a every now and again and going to Mecca. A lot of people. And when he asked the people, why are so many people going there? What's so good about that place? Don't forget, Arabia was a desert. There's nothing there. Nothing there at all. No food, no water. There's nothing. Yemen and Abyssinia and Syria, these places were flourishing. Historically, they flourished. Arabia was nothing there. It's desert. The desert, and you don't have nothing much. So I found it quite surprising. Why are so many people going there? And people told him that there's a house, Bayt Allah, house of God. That's the. And he inquired, what's it made out of? He said, bricks. They told him bricks. He goes, what is it clothed in? Does it have a cloth on top of it? And they told him, yeah, it's cloth, from nothing fancy, nothing special. And then he had an idea. He said, well, if there's nothing, so good about this place, then I will build a cathedral or a church to compete with the Kaaba and to attract people to come to it and to detract people from going. And he set out. And they say that the building was so high that he built that the people nicknamed it the Hat. The Hat. Aqlantwa. The Hat. Why? Because when people looked up at it, the hats fell off. So they nicknamed the building the Hat. The Hat. And the building was built using some of the stone and the materials from one of the palaces of Sheba, Sheba. Sheba? Yeah. The palace of Sheba, who was in some of the palaces that were derelict, no one lived there anymore. They used some of the material from there. And he used all kinds of beautiful material. Gold, silver, emeralds, all kinds of, he used everything, subhanAllah, and he really made it look very, very, very beautiful, subhanAllah. And he used all kinds of fancy material and perfume as well. And he had a rule that any of his workers who were caught not working or have not begun to work when the sun has risen, their hand will be chopped off. When the sun has risen, anybody not working already, start working, his hands will be chopped off. And that's his rule. That's how he built it very quickly. And one day, a man fell asleep, overslept, and came late to work. And obviously, the punishment was his hand was to be chopped off. Before his hand was chopped off, though, his mother came and pleaded with Abraha and told, please don't cut off my son's hand. Because you have to understand that the cutting off of his hand would mean the cutting off of his livelihood. How are you going to work? Manual. It was all manual work. Effectively, and you are consigning that man to a life of poverty. All he could do is beg. That's what people used to do. They beg. And he refused. And then she made a prayer against him. She said that may Allah, may you be struck by a hammer, and a hammer or an axe. The axe that chops stone. She said, may you be struck by the hammer that cuts away a stone. He said, today is for you, and tomorrow somebody else will be in charge. Al-yawm laka wa ghadan li ghayrak. Today is for you, and tomorrow will be for somebody else. And he got angry. He goes, what did you say? And she said, Na'am, today you're in charge. The kingdom is yours. Yesterday somebody else had it. And tomorrow somebody else other than you will be in charge. And these words really shook him. And they penetrated, they found a place in his heart. And he decided to remove and to stop that rule of people who are not working at sunset, or haven't begun to work at sunset, their hands will be chopped off. He got rid of that rule, thanks to this woman. Then he wrote to his leader in Abyssinia. And when the king of Abyssinia heard that Abraha had fought with Ariyat, his fellow Christian, his fellow army general, the king got very angry. And the king said to him, the king made an oath of Abyssinia. He goes, I will trample on the land of Sana'a, and I will the forelock, the nasiya, the hair, the front of the hair, I will take his hair, and I will throw it in the wind. That's what he said. When Abraha heard about this, he was a very tactful individual, and he wanted to not get the Najashi upset. So he sent a present to him. And he sent a present, and when the king received the present, it had some sand from Sana'a, and it had a piece of his hair, and there was a letter, and the letter said, "Oh dear king, please take this sand and trample on it, and take the piece of hair that I've sent you and throw it in the wind, so that your vow that you made becomes that you've kept your vow, and please accept this present from your servant Abraha." That's very, very clever. Politician. And what he says, "Ana Abdul Malik," I am the slave of you. I am your slave. That's what he wrote. And the king was very impressed. And SubhanAllah, he let him off. But anyway, Abraha then, obviously, when the church has been built, he sent a letter to the king and told him, I've built a cathedral for you that nobody else has ever built for any other king or leader before. And he ordered the people to stop going to Mecca and to come and to his church. And people began to do that, to the point where for several years people stopped going to Mecca from Yemen. And the Arabs then, for several years, stopped going there. And people would remain within that church. Now, when the Arab heard about this, they got very upset. They got quite angry, and they decided that they're going to do something. And one of them decided to. In one narration, this man he went to Sana'a, and he relieved himself, not in the toilet, but in the church. And in one narration, he actually took a dead animal and threw it in there. And in one narration, they actually burnt it down. They burnt, and that night there was a very strong wind that helped to fan the flames. Either narration, Allah knows best. But the point was, some kind of insult was given. When the king heard about this insult, he became very, very, very angry. And he ordered an investigation. Whom did this? And when it was brought to his attention that the man who did this was from the Arab tribes near Mecca, in particular people who were near the Kaaba, he made his mind up that he will go and he will destroy the Kaaba brick by brick. That's what he did. So then he set out, and he asked the king of Abyssinia to send him an elephant. You might be saying, okay, what's the elephant going to do? We have to understand there was no tanks back then. If you had an elephant like a tank. An elephant was sent, and this elephant was sent for Abyssinia. Yeah, that's fine. He must have brought it on a boat. SubhanAllah. And the elephant's name was called Mahmud. The elephant's name was Mahmud. Anybody called Mahmud here? His name was called Mahmud, the elephant. And they say he was the strongest elephant of the time. Definitely in that area, in that region, they had never seen a stronger elephant than him, Mahmud. He was also sent with 60,000 strong army from Abyssinia. The elephant was sent over, and an army of 60,000 was sent from Abyssinia. So he means business. He means he's not going to go there. He's very upset. And the king of Abyssinia agrees and sends these things to him. And the king then sets out. The king then sends out these things, and he then goes and sets out. So the tribe of Yemen, when they hear about this, what his plan was, they decided, very brave, they decided to go and stop him. And some of the tribes of Yemen at that time went out and they met him and tried to defeat him, but no match for the army. And they were defeated, and the main leader was taken. His name was Dhu Nafr. He was taken hostage, but the king Abraha was about to execute him. However, he pleaded with the king that maybe I will be some use to you, should you see it fit to allow me to live. And the king allowed him to live. And they kept on going, and then they got to the army marched, and then when they got to the land of Arabia, they came across another tribe of people who also wanted to fight against Abraha and to stop him, because the Kaaba was the Arabs. It belonged to Arabs, so this was an insult against him. And this army was led by somebody called Nufail, and Nufail, his army was defeated also, and he was also taken hostage. And he pleaded with the king that he could be of some use to the king, and the king he offered the king that he would be the guide to show them the way. So khalas, and that the king allowed him to live. Now Abraha went out, and when they got near Ta'if, the people of Ta'if, and Ta'if is just above Mecca. Ta'if is above Mecca. The people of Ta'if also had a house where they worshipped. And Ta'if is below. You have Mecca, you have Ta'if, and they were coming from Yemen. And the people of Ta'if got a bit worried because they also had a house of God, and they were sort of competing with the people of Mecca, with the Kaaba, and they got afraid. They thought that maybe Abraha was going to go and destroy their house and their idol. So they came out and they tell them, no, you got the wrong place. Don't destroy our place. It's fine, man. In fact, we're going to tell you where Mecca is, and where the Kaaba is, but don't get the wrong place. And they said, we'll show you. So he took this man who went out with them, and he went to show them. However, his name was Abu Rigal, this man. And however, when they got nearby to Mecca, they stopped at a place, and this man from Ta'if, this mushrik, he died. He died, and he was buried. They buried him there. And they say that the tradition of the Arabs, that in his grave, they said when they passed by his grave, they'd always throw a stone at his grave. The Arabs, because of what he tried to do, and he tried to help Abraha, and the type of things he's trying to do. So, as out of anger, they'd always throw a stone at his grave. They say, Allah, they say the grave is still there now. Allah. Now, Abraha then sent some of his army to go and see what is happening in Mecca. And he sent a small army out, and they came back and they gathered some wealth. And they returned. And the king then, Abraha, told his army when they returned back with a lot of animals and so forth. He told them, go and find the leader of the Meccans, the leader of the Arabs. Find him and tell him that I do not wish to shed any blood. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want loss of life on either side. All I want to do is to destroy the Kaaba. If you leave me alone to do that, I'm not here to kill, spill any blood. However, if you step in my way, then I'll be forced. The Arabs then began to talk amongst each other, and they were really angry, and they wanted to go out and fight. But they realized that how are you going to face an army that big? So they all agreed that Abdul Muttalib, who was the leader then, to go out to speak to Abraha. So Abdul Muttalib then returned with a guide from the army of Abraha, returned back with him to see the king. Now, when Abdul Muttalib walked in to the tent where Abraha was, several interesting things happened. The ulama said that there was an elephant nearby, and this elephant would only bow only to Abraha, and he'd never bow to anybody else. When Abdul Muttalib walked in, this elephant bowed down to Abdul Muttalib, and Abdul Muttalib then became very surprised. Why does it bow down to this Arab? So he asks his wise men, his religious people, and he asks them why. And they say that the elephant didn't bow down to him. The elephant bowed down to the nur, the light that was on his face. And as we're going to find out next week, inshallah, that the Prophet ﷺ manifested on the faces of some of his relatives, particularly nearer the time of his birth. The light manifested. The Prophet was there, passed down from prophet to prophet to prophet, passed down. But towards the more closer he came to being to becoming born in this world, the stronger the light that came on people's faces, particularly Abdul Muttalib, his head in particular, and Abdullah's head as well. Now, and they told him that the elephant didn't prostrate for Abdul Muttalib. It did prostrate because the light, the Prophet, the nur on his head. The elephant recognized it and is bowing down to the Prophet that he saw within him. And Abraha also, in one narration, was very, very impressed when he saw Abdul Muttalib. He was a very beautiful man. He was very impressed with him. And Abdul Muttalib was so struck by him that he decided to sit on the floor. But he disliked for people to see him sitting next to him. He was very impressed with him, and he didn't want to sit in a chair and him on the floor. But at the same time, he didn't want to sit and make himself equal with him. Because he looked bad to the people. But he wanted to respect him. So he himself sat on the floor on a pillow and had Abdul Muttalib sit next to him. So he's got a nice little something nice to lean on that he doesn't have. But he's sitting on the floor rather than him sitting above and him sitting below. And he then has translators, and the translators are talking, and they tell Abdul Muttalib tells them to speak to Abraha and tell him that I have come for my camels. So that the translators tell Abraha what exactly Abdul Muttalib wants, and Abraha becomes very surprised. He goes, I have come to destroy your house, the house of God that you Arabs are protecting, something religious, and you're asking about your camels. I thought you were a man. I thought you were a man of religious standing, a religious background, a dignitary. However, I find you now. I'm quite surprised by what you've asked for. And then he says something quite interesting. He says, "Ana Rabbul Ibn, wa inna lil bayt Rabban sayamna'uha." I am the Lord, the owner of my camels, and the house, the Kaaba, has a owner, a Lord who protects it. And the king then says, after hearing the translators, the king then tells the translators to tell him that no one's going to stop me today. And then Abdul Muttalib, upon hearing this, Abdul Muttalib then tells the translators, say, we're going to see. We're going to see. At any rate, Abdul Muttalib then was given back his 200 camels that were taken from him in the beginning. And he goes back. And Abdul Muttalib then actually offers Abraha a lot of wealth, money. He goes, they collect a lot of wealth, a lot of money, and he offered it to them in order to, maybe to change their minds. And he refused. And Abdul Muttalib then returned back to Mecca, and he told the Arabs that we have there's no hope of us fighting them because the army is so greater. It's so great that we have no hope in fighting them. And the best thing for us to do is actually to seek protection and to leave Mecca, leave it to Allah, and for us to go to the mountains. And in one narration, Abdul Muttalib then goes to the Kaaba with his sons and then makes a lot of dua, pleading to Allah Azza wa Jal to do something and to protect his house. At any rate, and then Abdul Muttalib then in one narration goes and he does not leave Mecca like the rest of the people who go to a mountain, but he actually stays nearby just to see what's going to happen, which is interesting. Interesting. Now, different narrations follow as to what happened, but what they say is that the elephant was they marched on towards Mecca, and in one narration they said that the elephant, they wanted to attach some rope from the Kaaba to the elephant in order for the elephant to pull the Kaaba down. That's one narration. One narration that says that there was approximately 13 elephants, but the stronger narration says there was only one elephant. Either way, what they found with this elephant, Mahmud, that they decide that every time they wanted to march forward towards Mecca, towards the Kaaba, the elephant would stop. And the elephant would sit. And they tried to get the elephant up. Now, getting an elephant up is very difficult. And they had a guide to the elephant, and he tried to get it up. It wasn't listening. It's like trying to start a train. There's no, the key doesn't work, the engine doesn't work. You're going to push a train? You can't do nothing. So they really were, they couldn't do anything. They beat the elephant. They tried to beat the elephant. They did all kinds of things to get it to move. It didn't move. It didn't move. And in one narration, subhanAllah, it says that they actually promised, they said to the elephant, look, we promise you that we're not going to Mecca. Well, and they promised it. And it's subhanAllah, very interesting, this narration, that the elephant, upon hearing this promise, the elephant then moved its ear. The elephant moved its ear as if to say, are you sure? And they said, yes, they promised it. So what they did then, they got the elephant up and they moved away from the Kaaba. And then what they did then, they kept it and then they turned it slowly around to come back. When it came back again, he sat down. Then they made a promise. Look, we promise you, we're not going to the Kaaba. We promise you. And the elephant, it moved its ear. Like, are you sure this time? Are you sure? And then they said yes. We promised this. We promise you. So the elephant got up and they marched away. And then they slowly brought it back again. They did this several times. It didn't work. And they say in one narration by Ibn Ishaq that the night before they had a sign that the punishment of God will come upon them. Why? Because they saw a particular star in the sky. And this star became very close in the sky to them, and they took it as a sign that a punishment will be upon them. That they really felt that. But either way, they decided not to listen to that, and they continued. So they continued marching. Obviously, the elephants couldn't do much. They continued marching. Then, all of a sudden, a black cloud appeared from the direction of the sea. It could be from the west, you could say. And all of a sudden, this cloud got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it became closer and closer. And they realized it wasn't a cloud. This mass was birds. These were birds, and there's several hadith that these birds were unlike any other bird that had ever been seen before. Nor did it look like any bird from any particular country. You have these migrations, bears that migrate from the west to the east, and the hot countries, the cold countries. So you see different birds. And these birds had never been seen before. They've never seen. All of a sudden, these birds flew over, and these birds each one carried 3 stones, like pebbles, you could say. 1 stone in the beak, and 1 stone in each of its claws. So 3 stones, the beak and the claws. And they flew over. And they began to throw these missiles at the army, and the army then began to face all kinds of horrific injuries. These stones burned through the bodies. They went all the way through it. In one narration, it says that they were affected with a skin disease that looked like chickenpox, or smallpox. Smallpox. The boils, blisters, pus, all these things came out on their skin. Their body, the nails, the part of the bodies, the ends began to fall off. That's what started to happen, subhanAllah. So it's very horrific injuries. And a lot of people were destroyed from them, and some survived. Abraham himself, in several narrations, was afflicted with a skin disease, and he said his body began to fall up. The parts of his body began to fall away. By the time he got back to Abyssinia, he said he looked a mess, boils and blisters, and his nails come off. When his nails came off, his part of his fingers began to fall off. It looked like a really horrible mess. And he, when he went and told the king of Abyssinia what had happened in this narration, when he finished describing, then a bird had followed him from Mecca, holding onto a stone. Didn't throw it. When he finished his story, the bird dropped the stone and killed him. So he actually survived, but he was killed later after when the bird that followed him. And very interesting, they say that these birds carrying stones from hell. And we see the ulama say that Allah Azza wa Jal, He protected the Kaaba not because of the Arabs who were people of shirk were better than the Christians. Nah, the Christians, they worship one God. They were better than the Arabs. Yes, they were better than the Arabs. The Arabs were mushrikeen. If anything, they should be destroyed. But Allah Azza wa Jal is as if He was saying, "O people of Quraysh, I, Allah, have protected and given victory over the Christians, not because you are better than them. No, that's not true. Why? Because I want to protect the Kaaba. Why? To protect it and honor it, and to make it, to glorify it, and to make it great, as a preparation when my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he comes. So Allah has protected it, not for them. Who are they? If anything, they should have had the stones thrown at them. They were the ones that introduced the stones, idols, and everything else. If you think about it, but Allah, that's a very interesting angle. Allah protected it not because of them, protected because of the Prophet. He's about to come. Because had that gone, there would be no Kaaba. So Allah was protecting it for when the Prophet came. And then obviously the surah Alam Tara. Do you not see? And Allah is talking to the Prophet. Do you not see? كيف فعل ربك? How your Lord, what your Lord did. كيف فعل ربك? Who? بأصحاب الفيل. The people, the friends of the elephant, the people of the elephant. Mahmud. Allah didn't call them the Christians or the Abyssinians. He named them after the elephant. The people of the elephant. Which is interesting if you think about it. Because Allah has mentioned several animals in the Quran. An elephant and a dog are two ones that come to my mind right now. An elephant here, and to hold the surah is called Surah Al-Fil, subhanAllah. And in Surah Al-Kahf, there's a dog. وَكَلْبُهُمْ. And then, بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل. Did Allah not? ألم يجعلهم في تضليل. Allah destroyed them. وأرسل عليهم طيرا. Allah sent them birds, أبابيل, a large mass, multiple numbers of these birds. ترميهم, to throw them, throw stones at them, pelt them. بحجارة من سجيل, stones from hell. Upon each of the stones was written the name of the person for whom the stone was intended for. SubhanAllah. Each stone had the name of the person who the stone was meant for. So it's like a letter, address, letter, so and so, letter. This stone's for him. This stone's for him. This stone's for him. And each stone landed. And there's a hadith, SubhanAllah, which I'll mention later on. We'll talk more about that. Now. And in a hadith narrated by Ibn Ishaq, Abu Nu'aym, Bayhaqi, that's Aisha, she says, may Allah be pleased with her, that لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ, I found the leader of the army, the one who guided the army, and some of the people who were part of the army. I saw them many years later, and they were both blind. They survived. They were both blind, and they were people who were paralyzed, couldn't walk, whether than legs or whatever. They were blind and could not walk sitting down. And and they were asking people, they were begging for food. Blind and could not move, so paralyzed, begging for food. Some of the people, subhanAllah, this is as a reminder, subhanAllah. Like Fir'aun is left in the museum as a reminder for people. Fir'aun is to this day in the museum in Egypt. You can go and see him. And in another hadith narrated by Abu Nu'aym that Hani bint Abi Lahab, that she had a stone from one of the stones that was thrown. She had in her possession one of those stones. Obviously, it cooled down now, many years later, and she had the stone in her possession, and there was a name written on it, the name of the person of the Christian, the person from the particular army, whose name was on it, and it's still visible many years later. She kept that, subhanAllah. Wallahu alam where that stone is now. SubhanAllah. But the stone's there. He said the name of the person and his father's name. The name of the person and his father's name on the stone. And because many years later, the stone was there, Hani. She had that. And like I mentioned, not everybody died. Some survived, some tried to run away, and some trying to find the way back to get to Sana'a through the desert. And like I mentioned, Abraha himself, he was afflicted with a disease in his skin, and his nails and his fingers and toes began to fall off. So he had this like leprosy, like leprosy. And every time a part of his body began to fall off, there was pus that grew in those areas, pus, and these type of like liquids that grew, and blood. And Abdul Muttalib, in one narration, Abdul Muttalib and Abu Mas'ud, who was with him, who were watching this, Abu Mas'ud said to him, "Look," Abdul Muttalib said, "Look towards the ocean." And they saw birds that were white in colour, and they were coming from the direction of the sea. And Abdul Muttalib said, "Look." He told Abu Mas'ud, "Look at the birds, try and see where they're from." And he tried to look, and he says, "They don't look familiar to me." And he said, "These birds passed over our heads." And when the birds passed over our heads, Abdul Muttalib said, "Do you recognize these birds? They look familiar to you?" And he goes, "No, they are not birds from Najd, which is to the east of Mecca, nor are they birds from Tihama, nor are they Yemeni birds, nor are they birds from Sham, from Syria and Palestine and those regions, and nor are they any birds that I have ever seen before." And that's what he says. And he began to describe these birds from what he could see. SubhanAllah. When the army began, when Allah Azza wa Jal gave victory to the Arabs then became known as Ahlullah, people of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's what they became known as, the people of Allah. And why? Because Allah, not them, Allah protected them. That was a miracle, And this is a miracle that happened before the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in the books of Aqidah, any miracle that came before the Prophet's birth is called irhas. And then there's miracles that came before his birth, before he became a prophet, and miracles that came after him. Now, this event, according to the strongest position, this event happened in the same year that the Prophet ﷺ was born. Now, Abdul Muttalib also wanted to marry his son. His son was called what? Abdullah. And in the hadith, Abdul Muttalib then, in one hadith, he goes he goes to Sham, and he returns back, and he finds himself in Yemen. In Yemen, Abdul Muttalib, and a person, a knowledgeable person who was Jewish, calls out. He says, and he was a man of the Torah, some of the book. He said to Abdul Muttalib, "Where are you from?" He says, "I am from Quraysh." And he said, "From which tribe of Quraysh?" He goes, "I'm from Bani Hashim." And he said, do you give me permission? Can I have your permission? I want to just look at your body a little bit closer. And Abdul Muttalib then says, as long as you're not going to look at any part of my aura, my nakedness, then you have permission. Abdul Muttalib, so this man's something he wouldn't ask unless there's a reason. And he's a religious man, very knowledgeable man. And this very knowledgeable man begins to look at his arms. And then he says to him, I testify, I bear witness that in one of your arms and one of your hands is a vast kingdom, and in the other hand I see prophecy, Nubuwah, I see prophecy. However, I find like prophecy is to be found in Bani Zuhra, the tribe of Bani Zuhra, not your tribe. However, I see it, within you. Then he said, obviously, because the sign, obviously, where are the signs from the Torah, from the previous prophets? They've told him in the books. It's there. So he's surprised because the sign that he's seeing, he shouldn't see it there. He should see it in Bani Zuhra, another tribe. So he says to him, "Are you married?" He goes, "No." And he goes, "Get married from the tribe of Bani Zuhra. Get married from the tribe of Bani Zuhra." So and then he Abdul Muttalib and his son Abdullah, they go and they get married from the tribe of Bani Zuhra. Because the prophecy was prophesied that it would be from Bani Zuhra. Well, he saw it in him. He's quite surprised. Now, obviously, what had happened is that it was from he took his son Abdullah to get married from there as well, because him, Abdul Muttalib and Abdullah both got married in the same day to two different women from the same tribe. However, the prophecy wasn't through Abdul Muttalib. The prophecy was Abdullah, because the prophecy, the prophet was with Abdullah, was in the loins of his son Abdullah. So the rabbi, he got the wrong man. But subhanallah, they say that's one of the wisdoms why Abdul Muttalib went to get married from the tribe of Bani Zuhra. And this hadith narrated by Tabrani wal Hakim wa Abu Na'im. And in a hadith narrated by Imam al-Bayhaqi wa Abu Na'im, Abdullah was described as the most handsome man that people had ever seen. And he went out one day and he walked amongst the women, and a woman said to the other women, "Which from amongst you will marry this man?" So that they may carry the light, this fantastic light that's on his face, that they may be the vessels to carry this light on his face. Why? Because I see this light on his face. And then Amina, she married him. In one hadith it says that there was a woman who was very knowledgeable, a very spiritual woman, and she then called out to the tribe of Bani Zuhra, and she said, "Amongst you there is a nadhira, or someone from amongst this tribe, from amongst these women, will give birth to the nadhir." And she said, "Let me see all the women from this tribe." So they knew. Very clear. Where did they get these signs from? It's already written in their books. So she spoke to every single woman from that tribe, and she told them things about each one of them, things that came to be true. And when she got to Amina, who's the Prophet's wife, who's Abdullah's wife, when she came to her, the woman said, "This, you are the Nadira, from you will be born Nadiran, and he will have a great affair, and you have a clear burhan, a clear guidance." So already now Amina is getting signs. Abdul Muttalib is getting signs. Subhanallah. And we find in a hadith narrated by Imam al-Bayhaqi and Ibn Ishaq that when Abdul Muttalib and Abdullah went to get married, they passed by a woman, and in several narrations this woman was known as Qutaylah, and she was a relative of Waraqah, and Waraqah was a monk who was very well read, a Christian monk, and he knew that there was a prophet coming towards the end of time. He knew that, and he read about it in his book, and he used to tell his relative Qutaylah about this prophet, and she knew. And when she saw Abdullah, she spoke to Abdullah. She said before he's getting married, she said to Abdullah, "Where are you going?" And Abdullah said, "I'm going to get married." And she said to him, "I will give you whatever amount of wealth is going to be exchanged today. I'll give you that wealth if you can make me your wife." And he said, "I can't. I've already promised from this tribe, and you have to marry from them. I can't." And he left and he went. And several days, 3 days passed by in one narration, and he then 7 days in, he met her later on, and she said to him, and he said to her, when she never offered herself in marriage, he found it strange. He said, "Why is it that today you didn't offer yourself like you did previously? Why before I got a few days ago you were very serious about getting married, and today you're not serious anymore? Why?" And she said to him, "The light, the nur that I saw on you previously is no longer with you anymore." Because she heard from Waraqah, and Waraqah, the monk, was her brother. She heard from him about the coming of the Prophet. SubhanAllah. And Waraqah himself would actually tell people that the last prophet of the world will come from Bani Ismail. So she knew it would be amongst the Arabs. SubhanAllah. And in one hadith narrated by Abu Nu'aym wal-Kharraidi that a woman actually offered herself there and then to Abdullah, and Abdullah said, "I can't do haram. I don't do these things. This is haram." He told us, SubhanAllah, "Amma al-haramu fal-mamatu dunah." As for haram, he said, I prefer. He mentions poetry. He goes, "As for haram, I prefer death to doing haram." That's what he told her. وَالْحِلُّ لَحِلَّ فَأَشْتَبِينَهُ فَكَيْفَ بِالْأَمْرِ الَّذِي تَبْغِينَهُ يَحْمِي الْكَرِيمُ وَعِرْضُهُ وَدِينُهُ. He said, "So how can I accept your offer that is haram, that which you want? Allah protects those who are honourable, their religion and their honour." And then in this narration, he a few days went by, and he met this woman again, and the woman said to him, she told him that, I swear by Allah that I am not a woman who does haram things. However, I saw on your face the light, this nur, that has become stronger now in these last days. Because it was always there, but it became stronger in these last days towards the end. And I wanted that I would be honoured to carry this light. However, Allah refused. إِلَّا أَن يَجْعَلُهُ حَيْثَ أَرَادُهُ. Allah refused, and Allah wanted it to go to that which He decreed. اذهب فأخبرها. He said, "Go." She told him, "Go and tell Amina, the woman he married, that she's carrying خير أهل الأرض, that she's carrying the best of all creation that has ever walked the earth." And then she sang out some poetry describing these things. Inshallah, next week, inshallah, I will begin the signs of the birth or the pregnancy. We find that Amina, she had signs that her birth was not like any other woman's birth. There were signs during her pregnancy. There were signs before her pregnancy. There were signs during her pregnancy. There were signs during the birth. And there were signs after the birth. SubhanAllah. In the realm of human beings, signs happened. In Mecca, signs were given. In Medina, signs were given. In Abyssinia, signs were given. In Sham, signs. In Faris, in Persia, there were signs. Amongst the jinn and the shayateen, there were signs. SubhanAllah. And the signs were a lot more stronger in the realm of the angels and the realm of the jinn and the shayateen. The signs were so strong, unlike in the realm of human beings. Inshallah, we're going next week to talk about the birth of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we're going to find that just like he was unlike any other human being, his birth was unlike any human being. No one has ever come on the face of the earth before or after like our Prophet. And his birth, no one has ever had a birth like his birth before or after. And that's obviously, and that's how it should be. Because no one's like him. He's the best of mankind. He's the greatest. So no doubt his birth should indicate his greatness. And next week we're going to mention several ahadith dealing with his birth. Any questions? Any questions?